Whenever I think of my commitment to choice, even in the most difficult times and most difficult of circumstances, the person that I think of, the person that comes to mind, my role model, is my grandmother. My grandmother, Goldie, was born in Sighet, Romania. She was born to a happy family. She had a sister, 5 brothers, loving parents, and she lived in the village of Sighet a happy life. And everything was wonderful and great until 1939, when war broke out. They rounded all the Jews in the village and sent them to work camps and concentration camps. Both her parents were murdered in the camps. Her 5 brothers were murdered in front of her very eyes in Auschwitz. When the Allied forces won the war, they came to liberate Auschwitz. And the soldiers came in, and next to the soldiers were doctors. And they moved person by person, the soldiers with the doctors. And the doctors would say yes or no. Yes meaning take that person, put them on the truck. No meaning leave that person here because he or she is going to die anyway, and we don't have much space in our hospitals or in our trucks. Person by person, yes, no, 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 yes, no. The choice that these doctors had to make at that point. They come to my grandmother, to Goldie. She's in her 20s then. She was tall, and she weighed 26 kilograms. She was skin and bones. She, of course, had no hair. She was very sick. She had typhus. The doctor looks at her and says, no. And then moves on to the next person. The next person is Shahar, my grandmother's sister, the only other surviving member of the family. Shahar weighed 36 kilograms. She was sick, but she was better. And the doctor said yes. She was too weak to stand up, so a soldier bends over to pick her up. And Shahar screams, no. She holds on to my grandmother's wrist, her very thin wrist. And she screams, no, no, sister, sister, no, sister. And the soldiers try to open her hand, and they can't because she's holding on so tight. No, no, sister, sister. And they try to open her hand, the soldiers, but they can't because she's so strong. And the doctor looks at them and says, okay, making this motion, put them both on the truck. And both go on the truck. And they go to hospital. And for over a month, my grandmother is about to die. Does not put on a gram of weight. But she refuses to die. Doctors from all over come to see her because she becomes one of those medical miracles. And she puts on weight after a month, after 2 months. And she continues to put on weight. And after 6 months, 7 months, she's healthy enough to walk, slowly with help. But she can walk by herself. And she's sent back home to Siget. She arrives in Siget on a cart, on a coach, a farmer's coach with a horse pulling it. And a man on his bicycle sees that coach coming in and recognizes the woman there. The man's name is Yossi. And he bikes over to the coach and he sees Goldie and recognizes her. Even though she doesn't look like she looked before, because she was beautiful. And now she's thin, she has no hair, but he recognizes her eyes, the sparkle there. And she hides when he comes over because she doesn't want him to see her as she is now. And he says, "Hello, Goldie," and she says, "Go away." And he says, "No, I will come with you." And he holds on with his bike to the cart, and the cart pulls both of them to her home. And he helps her up the stairs to an empty home, to a wrecked home. And he comes later and gives her a gift, chocolates. And she savors it. She hasn't had chocolate for 4 years, and she savors every bite. And he says, "I will come to pick you up tonight. We will go to a movie." And they go to a movie together, and 2 weeks later, they get married. And my grandmother becomes pregnant over a year later. And she's about to give birth. And the fetus, the baby, dies. And she becomes pregnant again. And they want to continue. And once again, her body is not able to hold that new life in her. And he dies. And then they want to move to Israel. At that time, 1948, the beginning of 1948, where they could live in dignity. And they come in, it was the beginning of 1948. Israel has not been declared yet. And they stealthily try to come in, and they are caught by the British because there's a curfew. No Jews are allowed to come in until the 14th of May of that year, when Israel will officially be declared. And they are taken to camps in Cyprus. And she's there, her sister and her husband are there, and she's pregnant. And she gives birth to a little girl. And she survives. And 3 months later, they move into Israel. And again, she becomes pregnant. And again, she loses her child. And she cannot be pregnant again. And her daughter, Tzipi, has 3 children. Myself, my brother, my sister. And I fast forward now to 1987. I go with my grandmother to her sister's grave. Her sister, who had just passed away a year earlier, Shindi. Her sister who saved her life, who herself could never have children, and we were her children. And we go to her grave just outside Tel Aviv in Chulon. And we're standing there, and my grandmother is talking to her. And she says, Shindi, Talik is here with me. And things are going so well and so wonderful. Tzipi is doing well. Moti, my father, is doing great. The children are just so wonderful. And she's telling them, and she's talking to her for half an hour in Yiddish, in Hebrew. And I'm just observing this wonderful, amazing woman. And then she looks at me and she says, Talik, let's go. And we walk, and it's a beautiful September day. The wind is blowing. The sun is shining. And I see a dove flying. She holds my wrist as we walk among the graves. And then suddenly she stops. And she looks up and she says, what a beautiful world this is. Such a pity we have to leave. And she continued to walk. My grandmother lost her entire family. My grandmother went through horrendous experiences that are not imaginable. My grandmother gave birth to 3 stillborns. And my grandmother chose to live. And my grandmother chose to appreciate this wonderful, beautiful world that we live in. My grandmother told me that this is a beautiful world. I believe her. Thank you.